Soninha, eu posso monitorar o YouTube para você, viu?
Bom dia, Vitor. Muito obrigada. Okay.
Você colocou para começar às 2h04, é isso? No YouTube?
Tá
No
errado?
YouTube vai começar a live às 2h04 só. Então, sorry, não 2h04, 11h04.
Ah, 11h04? É que eu coloquei agora há pouco.
Ah, agora foi. Agora foi.
Show. Gratidão. So, good morning, everyone. Good morning for joining us today with our public meeting. And welcome, everybody, this beautiful Sunday. We are going to start our talking today just as a reminder about our meeting on the light of Gospel of Jesus that happens every Monday from 8 to 8:30 after our Portuguese public meetings. So it's just a reminder and that everybody is invited to join us every Monday after our public meeting. So after that, let's read our text, our harmonization text, and then we are going to do our prayer, and then we are going to start talking about the topic that we have brought today. So the text is from the book Reformer. It's message from Emmanuel, psychographed by Francisco Cândido Xavier on March 1964. And it's entitled Peace in Us. For this is our glory, the testimony of our conscience. Paul, 2 to Corinthians. Embracing spiritual renewal for the conquest of light. We are almost always contradicted by the forces of shadow, as if our hearts were exposed to all destructive criticism. You cultivate kindness and they call you a fool. You show patience and they imagine you to be an idiot. You forget blows and you have suffered and they call you a coward. You practice humility and they call you a fool. You speak the truth and they think you are obsessed. You exercise gentleness and they call you lazy. You help fraternally and they poison your gestures. You trust and they say you are fanatic. You fulfill obligations and some mock you. However, despite all the doubts and challenge that surround your steps, keep going forward, attending to the duties that life prescribes for you, according to the testimony of your conscience, in the conviction that true happiness means in everything peace in us. So, with these words in our hearts and in our minds, Let's ask to Lord Jesus and to God. Let's ask their presence with us here today. Let's ask to the superior spirits, our mentors, Jesus, send his inspiring light to help us to reflect upon his eternal teachings. Master Jesus and our guardian angels, be with us today and help us to be receptive, to understand how to develop, how to create peace in us, so we can be as our brother Saint Francis of Assisi, when he says, Lord, help me to be the channel of your peace, in order to help Earth to become a peaceful place to live, a regenerate planet, where the fraternity makes its place in each and every heart. So be it. All right. Okay, let's start our talk today then. We are going to talk about this beautiful prayer that St. Francis brought to us. But we are going to reflect upon this special virtue, this specific virtue, which is peace. When our Francis of Assisi says, Lord, make me a channel of your peace, it's an invitation to ourselves to ask, as an invitation to us to ask to ourselves, do I really want to be a channel of Jesus' peace? So with this question in mind, and we expect that Jesus inspire us to think how we can become a channel of his peace, we decide to bring some questions, some reflections, some texts that has inspired us with this topic, and the sources that we brought to reflect today, we got from the book written by Alírio Cerqueira Filho from the Spiritizar Project, the Sublime Prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. We also brought some texts from the Happy Days. It's a book written by Afro Stefanini II, by the Spirit Honorio. We got some inspiration from the lecture that Artur Valadares from NEP, he provided to us in his talk, The World's Peace and the Christ's Peace. And we also got some inspiration, some texts from the Gospel According to Spiritism, a Spiritist book from Allan Kardec, and the Gospel of Jesus. So let's start with some questions that we hope we can provide answers during this talk today. And they also work as a self-reflections. So the first questions are, what does peace mean? Do I really know what does peace mean? What is Jesus' peace? It's a different kind of peace in which Which kind of peace is that? What does the gospel of Jesus teach us about peace? Have I my conscience and heart in peace? How can I find peace? Is it somewhere outside of me? Or is something that I need to create or to develop in myself? And is the last question. Can I find peace in somewhere outside of myself? So the title of this talk, which is Lord, make me channel of your peace, it's very actual. We all know that we are in the middle of a pandemic, which has been requiring from us to avoid or to be away from our friends, family. Most of us are working from home, so we need to practice the social distancing. And this is causing lots of mental health. There are so many people experiencing anxiety and depression, and so many other types of mental health. But we also know that depression has been increasing, not only now because of the pandemic, has been increasing before this event. The World Health Organization says that depression is a common illness worldwide, and with more than 264 million people affected, which we could think that this is another type of pandemic. And so this situation, this current situation that we are living now, provide us this knowledge or makes us think that there are so many people out there, and maybe we are also experiencing a kind of lack of balance in our lives, lack of happiness and peace. So Arthur, in his lecture, he says that this is not new. And what made he tell us this? It's because it's regarding a question from the Spirit's book. When Kardec was working on the codification of the doctrine of the spirits, he asked to the superior spirits, what's the secret of happiness? Why so many people are not happy? And this question 942, it's a continuation. As we have been studying the Spirit's book, we know that each question is related to the question before. And the question 941, Kardec was talking or asking to the spirits about the difference, how a materialistic man and a spiritualist man faces death, how they can see death. And the spirits were saying that the materialistic man sees death in a very scary way, because they are very attached to the corporeal life, and the happiness consists only in this temporary satisfaction. His soul is constantly worried and anguished by the vicissitudes of the life. And materialistic man is always in this perpetual anxiety way, while the spiritualistic man, they have placed himself above all these superficial or materialistic needs, And this gives this the spiritualistic man. We are talking about man here, but it's related to every spiritual, every human being. When we place our needs in our thoughts, our heart, and the spirituality world, we can see that the vicissitudes, the problems that we have in life are temporary. And we kind of have this calm and serenity towards the challenges of life. There are no such impact from the disappointments that the life brings to us as it has in the materialistic man. So let's go to the question 942 and see what Kardec asks to the spiritual world, to the benevolent spirits. He asks, one they say that the true secret to happiness is being able to endure one's misfortunes. So what Kardec is saying here is, happy on the earth is only about a person takes care of his or her own problems. So I take care of my own problem and you take care of your own problem, and then we are going to be happy. So they will not think that if a materialistic man think that happiness is only about this and this life, and the spiritual man think that that's the way that they will be happy. So each of us, we take care of our lives, we carry on our problems, and we are going to be happy. I don't care about the others. And the answer from the benevolent spirits are very interesting. It's quite interesting. They answer, many people adopted this view, but some are similar to individuals who fall ill and demand to be cured without changing their habits. Although their physicians prescribe corrective diets, they continue the indulgences that aggravated their conditions in the first place. So I highlighted this sentence because it's related to what Louise brought to us last Monday about which types of habits we have been cultivating in our lives. If we don't want to change our habits, which means if we don't change the way we see life or the way that we are taking care of our lives, how we are going to be better? Old pathways don't open new doors. We want to keep acting in the same way, but we expect different results. It's like what the spirits are saying here. We fall ill, we want to be cured, but we don't want to follow what the prescription that the physicians ask us to take. We don't want to take the medicine. We don't want to change anything. We want to just to keep acting the way that we are, and we expect to be happy or to get a different result, to move ahead. So that's not possible, because as St. Francis says in his prayer, where there is hatred, that I take love. We are not doing that. We want to keep both feelings occupying the same space. We want to keep them in the same space. It's not possible. Where we have hatred, there's no space for love. Where we have injury, there's no space for pardon. Where there is doubt, there's no space for faith or despair for hope. So we are invited to gradually replace those feelings, develop the virtues, and then we are gonna feel that this will change our lives, will bring us the peace that we are looking for. And that's what the majority of people are doing. They're trying to keep on the same space, the opposite feelings. So the medication is for here for so long, more than 2,000 years. This prescription is here and was brought by the physician of the souls, the Master Jesus. He brought us this medication, but we are not following his prescription. We are always trying to get a new prescription outside of ourselves. And then the doctrine of the spirits came to recall us to have the goodwill that Victor brought to us in his lecture last Sunday, to recall Jesus' message. And what is this message? Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts to be troubled, and do not be afraid. John chapter 14, verse 27. So that's the point. When we see here, when Jesus says, my peace I give you, we have this mixed up because we think that we should be waiting for Jesus to give us his peace. So we are not taking the medicine. We are just waiting and doing nothing. And how can a virtue be developed outside of us? How can someone can give a virtue to us? Virtue is a process. It's something that we are invited to create in ourselves, to develop in ourselves. In order to receive this peace from Jesus, we need to move. We need to go towards Jesus. We need to go towards God. And nobody goes to God without come to him first. In his word, nobody will come to God without coming to me. Because he is the door, he is the gate, he is the truth. He is our model and guide, as the question 625 from Spirit's book says. And what's the difference between his peace and the peace that word gives us? So if we see what is peace in the dictionary, we would see that the meaning is freedom from disturbance. So freedom from disturbance means doing nothing, maybe be in a passive way, just waiting, as similar as a lake with stagnated water, clear and calm on the surface, but full of mood in the deep side. Is this a kind of peace? And talking about lake's water, it's a little story, it's a short story that Arthur brought to us in his lecture, which is a Jewish story. And this story is about some wise men that they get together to debate, to talk about what's the difference between the Galilee Sea and the Dead Sea. Both lakes, but they're called sea because they are very big in Israel. And what's the difference between them if both are supplied by the Jordan River. And one of the wise men says that the Sea of Galilee receives its water from the Jordan River, from north, and releases the water in the south. And for this reason, it's full of fish and life. And the Dead Sea doesn't do that. The Dead Sea keeps all the water. And for this reason, it's dead. So what we can learn from that virtue is donation, is movement, is something that is life, creates life. How can we create peace? How can we create peace if we don't move, change our old behaviors, old habits, and start becoming more pacific and not passive? And that's the invitation. When we active, when we are in an active way, when we are practicing, exercising these virtues in our daily routines, we are in movement. We are creating life in ourselves and wherever we are. It's donation. And that's the reason that the lake from Galilee has so many lives. And the word peace is like the Dead Sea, because the modern society asks us to cultivate the individualism, the materialism, to think, only about ourselves, to be competitive and superficial. Those kind of habits don't provide us the peace that we are looking for, the peace that our immortal spirits are here to develop. And also are to remind us a good example, because this is not new. These mortal habits are not new. We have been in this process for a long, long time. And a good example for us in many, many aspects, but in this especially, is Paul, the apostle. So before he had that encounter with our Jesus, our Master Jesus, Saul, before met Jesus, was Saul, and after that he became Paul. He was looking for the world's peace. However, his soul was full of violence. And if you have ever read this book, Paul and Stephen, I highly recommend that you should read. It's a beautiful story of a man that make a huge effort to become a better person, to become an apostle of Jesus, to overcome his own imperfections, to strive with all his bad habits, and he turned all these habits in good habits. So before he met Jesus, Saul he had everything, material things in life. He was raised by a very rich family. He had a very good education. He was young, and he had a very good job, or a great job at the Synedrium as as a doctor of the God's law. And he was very intelligent and ambitious. He had everything that a successful man in our society would like to have. But he didn't have one thing. He didn't have peace. the peace that he could see in the Christians, in Stephen, that was the first Christian martyr. He was stoned by Saul. He didn't have that serenity and that clear and lucid mind that the Christians had. And he wanted that so much. So in that desert, going to Damascus, on the gates of Damascus, he met Jesus. And then he realized that was the peace that he was looking for. The peace that he was fighting against actually was the peace that he wanted so much. And then Paul starts seeking for Jesus' peace. And he became the greatest example of transformation that we could find in the gospel of Jesus. So he was a conflicted soul, violent pride, so totally blind for the truth. And when he met Jesus, he became blind for 3 days as an invitation to him to start looking in himself, inner, in his own hearts, and not outside. Because when we start looking like so for the peace outside of us, it's a very fragile peace. Because we cannot control what is happening outside of us. We cannot control the peace that we placed on our jobs, on a family member, the things that can be changed because it doesn't depend on us. We only can control what is inside of us, not outside of us. When we start developing this peace in ourselves, we can keep that serenity, the calm that the benevolent spirits were saying in the question 941, the serenity towards all the problems that we face in life, because we have the view for the eternity. We don't have only the view for what's happening here, because everything that happens here in our lives, it's temporary and has only one goal: to help us to become better, to help us to learn. We need to, we are invited to see us as apprentices. We are apprentices of life. So we are here to learn. And everything that happens in our lives has this goal. What can I learn from this situation that I'm living right now? What Jesus can help me to learn? How can I see everything that is happening, this storm that is happening outside me, the isolation, to be away from my family, how this can help me to develop the serenity, the patience, to wait, things get better. My faith that everything happens for one reason. And if God is allowing this happening, it's because this is for the good, for everybody. So let's see then what is exactly then this Jesus peace. Alirio brings in his book, The Sublime Prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, what is Jesus' peace? And he explains to us that the peace of Jesus is a process. that happens inside each of one of us from a loving choice we make as a result of a questioning. Do I want to be an instrument of the peace of Jesus? Do I really want to be? Or I am just trying to develop a virtue that I'm not really interested to build myself. So as Alirio says here, it's a process, and a process is something that happens gradually. It's not something that happens from overnight. So we remember, I recall from the book Paul and Stephen, a speech that Stephen did before he was stoned by Paul or by Saul. He was in the way in their place where they did lectures with other apostles like Peter and other John and other apostles, and then he was giving this lecture, and Saul was there, but not to learn something, but to see what they are saying, so he could have some reasons to put there in jail. And then Stephen said, Christ built his kingdom of love and peace among us on divine foundations. His exemplification is projected into human soul with eternal light. So it's something that is eternal in ourselves. His exemplification is here for more than 2,000 years. And we are still debating if we should or not follow his teachings. We don't want to take his medicine that the doctor of the soul is bringing to us or has brought to us for so long. And he is our model and guide, as I said before. We are invited to model Jesus, but only if we want to make this loving decision. Because we have here the law of freedom that we are invited to use well and to make good choices. And by using well the law of liberty or the law of freedom and the attribute of our spirit, which is our goodwill, as Victor told us in his last lecture, to make efforts to develop the virtues that the circumstances of life invite us to develop. For this reason, St. Francis starts his prayer asking to our Master to make us channel of his peace, but not something that Jesus will make us. We will take this decision. We'll make this decision to become his instrument, the instrument of his peace. And as I said, this is just a result of our efforts, which needs to be disciplined, perseverant, and always in the limit of our strength. Because it's something that, as immortal spirits, we have a long time to pursue. This is our destination, to evolve until we become pure spirits. So there is a song in Brazil that is very, that can reflect very well what Alirio is saying here. It's the song of Nando Cordel that says, peace for the sake of peace, paz pela paz. And the lyric says, peace in the world begins in me. If I have love, I am certainly happy. If I do good to my brothers, I have greatness in my heart. The time has come for us to build peace. No one can stand the lack of love any longer. Peace for the sake of peace. This is a so beautiful message that really emphasized what Alirio says with the process of the development of the virtues, because the virtues starts with us. There's no way that the world will provide us virtue. We need to be virtue, to build this virtue inside of us and to bring out of ourselves and donate as the Sea of Galilee, to the world. When I'm doing that, when I am practicing those virtues, I can feel the love. I can feel gratitude because I am in this process of learning. So I feel happy. And recalling what Emmanuel says in his text that I brought from our harmonization today, happiness equals peace. Because in everything, the true happiness is in everything, peace in us. And I have this greatness or this gratitude in my heart to build the peace in myself. And peace doesn't mean, actually, again, to be passive, but pacific. Like we have lots of good examples besides Paul, actual very, very recent examples like Chico Xavier. He was a pacific man, but he had so much struggles in his life. His life was not easy. Gandhi was a pacified person, but he fought to free India. Mother Teresa, that had a very, very tough life, but she had peace. And one of her quotes says, if we have no peace, it's because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. That's not beautiful. We are here to practice all the virtues. The fraternity is the main one that will be the virtue that will be in every heart in a regenerated planet. And we are living this transition now. So it's time to build love in ourselves, because no one more can stand the lack of love any longer. So from the days of the happy days, the book by Honorio, psychographed by Afro Stefanini II, we can see the same when Honorio says that the natural state of the immortal spirit is peace, which will always be the result of the good fulfillment of the intellectual moral duties in conscience. What Honorio wants to say with this, that this is our natural state, because we are God's creature, we are God's children. So we bring in ourselves, in our essence, his DNA, which is love and peace. But we will be able to feel this peace as a result of the good fulfillment of the intellectual moral duties. So the two wings of the wisdom. And how we are fulfilling these duties in ourselves. And this is what Emmanuel also brought to us in his text, attending to the duties that life provides for us according to the testimony of our conscience. As Honorio says here, moral duties in conscience. And why conscience? Why? Because again, the question 621 from the Spirit's book, where is God's law written? In the conscience. But why, someone would ask, why do I need to fulfill my intellectual and moral commitments in order to have peace? And the answer is on the third part of the Spirit's book, question 614. What is natural law? Natural law is God's law. It alone ensures the happiness of human beings. It shows them what they should or should not do, and that they only suffer when they deviated from it. So happiness, that's the consequence of the good fulfillment of our moral and intellectual duties. And also, I ended up find out that there is a law of peace. And what is that? Honorio says that the process of inner peace begins when the spirit, conscious of its own movements of resistance to the divine laws of creation, works to make itself receptive to the determinations of God in its own life, not competing with the circumstances that are divine resources to bring the spirit back to the conscious house of the divine laws, in the presence of the Father, according to the parable of the two sons, taken from the Gospel of Jesus. So when the spirit, conscious of his own movements, to resist of the determinations of God, because there is just one determination that God gives to us, is the determination to evolve, the determination to be happy. And when we resist to this determination, when we don't want to be receptive to the circumstances that the life brings to us, that sometimes are challenges, I know, but they are invitations, they are resources from the divine sword, the divine law, to bring us back to the divine laws, to the house of the divine laws. As the parable of the two sons, when the young son goes away from the father's house, what he had encountered, only pain and suffering. But then when he decided to get up and return to the father's house, he became better. He started his process of happiness because he was complying with the divine laws in his mind, in his soul, in his conscience. So the laws that are in our conscience, we are invited to comply with them and not to resist to them, to be receptive to the God's determination. When we compete, when we fight against, we are hurting ourselves, first of all. We are invited to understand what the invitations of the lives are bringing to us, so we can understand the lesson and we can start learning how to become better, how to return to our Father's house. And he also says there are many loving laws of the Creator waiting for us to know them, to love them, to fulfill them in our own soul. But the law of peace will always be the sum of the law of duty and the law of love, freeing us from inertia and fear of ourselves. So again, so here we discover that the law of peace is the result of the law of duty, as Emmanuel said to us, to fulfill our commitment, and the law of love, that we surrender ourselves to God's law, which is love. And then how we do that? First of all, we need to move in this direction. We need to free ourselves from our inertia and free from our fear of ourselves, because sometimes the self-knowledge is not an easy way, is not an easy pathway. It's hard to know ourselves because sometimes we have some imperfections that we don't accept very easily. But we are invited to see all those perfections as signs for us to improve. Oh, I'm feeling this hatred, so I'm inviting to put some love in this hatred. I am feeling doubt, so I'm invited to put some faith in this doubt. So to see that we are invited to see our imperfections are signs, like as signs for us to become better. That's what the love and loss of the Creator are invited us to do. And as Honorio says here, there are so many laws out there waiting for us. We just discovered one today, law of peace. I didn't know that there was a law of peace. And it's so great, so good to know. Because that's what our invitation. And then it's good to remember that graphic that shows us how to build this virtue, or how to comply with God's law. How do we do that? So this graphic that we got from the project, the Spiritual Project, is always a good remind to us that we are invited to surrender and act. To whom? First of all, to God, to the divine laws in our conscience, to change ourselves, our immortal spirits, creating immortal virtues, immortal habits that will be with us through the eternity. So that's the invitation that we like to bring again, because it's good to have in our minds this graphic that invite us to surrender to God. Because can we change God? No. Can we change the divine laws? No. Can we change us? Yes. We only can change ourselves and do what St. Francis tells us in his prayer. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Doubt, faith. Despair, hope. Darkness, light. Starts with our goodwill to move ahead, to take, or to have this first step towards God, to bring to our hearts the peace that we want to see in this world. And Arthur, it's amazing, his lecture about this two kinds of peace. He brought us this parable of Jesus that I haven't heard before, and it was a great reflection, because bring us this parable that talks about the kingdom of heaven that we find in Matthew chapter 13, verses 47 to 48, where Matthew described that what Jesus said. Once again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was let down in the lake and caught all kinds of fish. When it was full, the fishermen pulled it up on the shore. They sat down and collected the good fish in baskets, but threw the bad away. How can we interpret this parable? We also know that a parable has so many layers, and sometimes we can have different reflections upon them. But this reflection that Arthur brought to us was very, very interesting because it has everything to do with how we can maintain the peace in our hearts. Because when we see here the kingdom of heaven, it's like a net that was let down in the lake. We are invited to think that every morning we let down our net. We wake up and it's a new way, it's a new life, it's a new day. And we let down our net into this lake of life. And we don't know which kind of fish we're gonna catch. So we can get some fish that are not good, like hurt, like problems, like confusions, or any kind of situation. And at the end of the day, at the end of the fish day, we have all these fish in a basket, which is our heart. And then we are in the shore, which means the shore balance, stable, sea movement. And then we sit down on the shore and we go to this basket and we reflect upon what happened in our life in that day. And we separate what is good for us to keep in our hearts and what is not good. And we should recycle, we should take away from our hearts. And this is not what the question 919A, where St. Augustine brings us to do every single day in the end of the day. And this is not what says in the Gospel of Spiritism about how is the behavior of the good man. So we should, to keep our mind, our hearts hygiene from our cleaning, from all these feelings that are not good. This is the invitation. If we do this every single day at the end of our day. And I'm going to leave you with this invitation from Jesus, that I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. What Jesus means with, but take heart, tenha bom ânimo, believe, and keep moving ahead, despite all the tribulations of the world that the world brings to us, because we live in a planet of trials and expiations. So naturally, we are going to have expiations, we are going to have tribulations. But if we accept Jesus' invitation, following his teachings, take his medicine, submitting ourselves to the divine laws, being connected with God, having a good spirit in making efforts to develop the virtues in our souls, we will overcome all the tribulations of this world, and we will be able to help to build a regenerate world when we decide using our love, freedom, our free will, and our goodwill to develop the virtues. And then, only then, you're going to become an instrument or a channel of Jesus' peace. This is all that I have for you today. Really appreciate your attention. Let me see if there's any questions, any comments. Can you check that for me, please, Victor?
Yeah, no questions, but just Anna, Louise, and Carol saying hello.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to say that it was a really interesting text that you brought at the very beginning, and how it ties into what the first passage from John that you brought us, saying for us, telling us not to be afraid to find peace. I never really understood the not being afraid of finding peace, but when you read that text from Emmanuel, that he was telling us how virtues are not well understood, like goodness. If you're good, you might look like a fool if you have patience, or if you forgive, you might be seen as a coward. So just how we still don't understand the virtues fully. So yeah, we shouldn't be afraid of what others and ourselves might think when we're trying to develop virtues, because virtues are not weak as they seem.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, that was really, really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Claudia, for being here with us. Thank you, Carol, Luis, and Anna. Really appreciate all your presence. And that's it. If nobody has any other comment, let's have our final prayer. So once more, let's close our eyes and elevate our hearts in gratitude to our Master Jesus that allows us to reflect upon his eternal words. Let's say thank you to Emmanuel, to Honorio, to all the benevolent spirits that have been helping us to create the peace in our hearts. Like the first Christians, let's put our hearts on God's hand and believe that we only can be in peace, developing the virtues, to complying with our duties, and love ourselves and love everybody, love our neighbors as we love ourselves. May everybody has a good Sunday, a blessed Sunday with your families and friends, and God bless you all. Thank you very much. So be it.
Thank you, Sonia. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. For you too.
Enjoy the cakes.
Yes. Let's go to pick up our cakes.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.